Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brunel for Business webinar series, Opportunities and Resilience in Crisis. We are here today to listen on a topic about adapting to the new normal. So we have here Dr. Ana Canhoto, Reader in Marketing and Divisional Lead for Marketing at Brunel Business School, Dr. Liyuan Wei, Senior Lecturer in Marketing, and Mr. Tim Kourdi, a hotel owner in Oxford. Now, we're very lucky to have these individuals with us. They have been working closely together to help Tim adapt to the new normal. So Tim owns a business, a hotel in Oxford, and with these shutdowns and restriction in place, you know that all the major economies has really being impacted by the COVID-19, and one of the most heavily hit sector is actually hospitality. So let's listen to what they have to say about the collaboration and on how they managed to adapt and help team to adapt to the new normal.
Is Tim Kourdi, and I'm the owner of the St Margaret's Hotel in Oxford. As you can see from the picture, it is a small hotel. It has 11 rooms. We're nicely situated on the edge of the university, which means that we have a lot of academic clients, graduates for their ceremonies. We have alumni who come to the colleges. It's handy for conferences at the university. But in addition, there are also 6 independent schools in the local area. 2 of those focus on overseas students. So the parents, when they send their son or their child overseas to study, like to come for several days to settle their child in and also to visit. So we have a lot of parents coming as well. There are also about 5 hotels that are other hotels within a 10-minute walk. So the competition is fairly high, but we all have different niches. Some target business people. Others have events like wedding receptions and things like that. So we all have our different niche, which is good. Specifically, as I said, it is in Oxford, 15-minute walk from the city centre. We have 11 rooms, which is a mixture from singles through to family. The thing about our rooms, because it is a Victorian building, you actually have 3 rooms. You have an entrance hall that you walk into, and you can store your luggage and things like that there. You walk off the entrance hall is the ensuite bathroom, and then off the entrance hall is the room itself. And when we take people in, the first thing they tend to say is, wow, because they're not used to high ceilings, big rooms, picture rails, dado, and we have decorated it in the Victorian style, because one of the things that we try to sell ourselves as is an Oxford experience. All the rooms are named after Oxford colleges. The house itself has stained glass windows, and I don't know how many holiday photographs they have appeared in, but it's lots. So we have a Victorian character, but with modern facilities, and we aim ourselves as a boutique style hotel. And we have a staff of 6 people, 3 full-time, 3 part-time, and we operate 7 days a week. We're now operating 52 weeks of the year, high and low season. Now, in March of this year, at the beginning of March, bookings were looking good. Bookings way up into January, February of next year. And we were hoping for another good year of revenue. and we had no reason to believe it wouldn't be similar to last year. Then COVID-19 arrived, and as of May this year, that booking order book is now down to 44% of what it was in March. So, and that didn't happen overnight, it happened in cliff falls. So beginning of March, it fell suddenly by 20 to 30%, and then another one in April, and another one in May as the lockdown progressed. Now, when I've got cliff falls like that happening to my order book bookings, I'm thinking, okay, this is something completely different. This isn't people cancelling because of sickness or whatever. This is a major event. What do? I am at the coalface, so I need a broader picture. I also need outside help, because as I'm so close to it, I need a perspective from further back to people, so they can tell me, if you actually look or lift your head up or look to the right, or you'll see something that might be useful. And I am familiar with the reputation and work of Ana, so I contacted Brunel and said, help, in a simple way. Okay, this is a situation, order book disappearing, what can I do? So they said, okay, right, let's start from the beginning. And we went through scenarios and possibilities. One of the first things we did, I'll give you an example, is we looked at how to increase revenue. And they pointed out to me, Tim, what are you selling? I'm selling hotel rooms. No, you're not, you're selling space. As soon as they said we're selling space, I had a different mindset. Okay, how do people use space? Oh yes, storage. Well, maybe we can use it for storage. So I looked at storage prices, things like that. When I did the due diligence, the insurance company said you're not covered. Okay, so that idea did not come to fruition. But they provided me with something I hadn't thought of or wanted to thought of. So we then discussed other ideas, other possible scenarios of how we could generate income. For example, we realized that there would be family and friends would come. And we also know from the online travel agencies that hiking and walking things were high on people's list of things they wanted to do once they could travel. So we discussed walking. And I said, well, people only walk around to look at the historical buildings. So I said, well, what about the tour groups, tour guides? So I immediately went to my network and talked to my good friends at Experience Oxfordshire, who organise those tourist type activities. And they very helpfully told me, yes, you can do this. Here are the details. And also in our Experience Oxfordshire network are these tour group companies that might be interested in teaming up with you. So from a small discussion and the use of my network, I was doing things that I hadn't thought of and using my network in a way that hadn't occurred to me. And now I've got meetings with owners of tour companies, and we're going to look at where we can partner so that they can get work doing the tours and I can get the bookings as they stay overnight. It's working in partnership. That's a thing that hadn't occurred to me before. So we're developing that. We talked about the new normal. And for those who are wondering what the new normal is, it is a complete reset. It's like doing Control-Alt-Delete on your computer and resetting it. To illustrate this, There's a 5-star hotel in Oxford, and one of the OTAs lists the bookings I have lost, and I lose bookings to this 5-star hotel. Now, I'm thinking, well, that's fair enough. They're 5 stars, they've got facilities I haven't got. So I'm good, I'm glad I'm on the same list as the 5-star hotel, but that's what's happening. But this new normal has changed everything. That 5-star hotel is now a direct competitor of mine. Reason being that people are worried about their safety and hygiene. The 5-star hotel, yes, it's got gyms, spas, fine dining and everything. But if people aren't happy and safe at that hotel and are at mine, I will win bookings. And that's what we mean by the new normal. Everything is reset. Yes, over time, changes will happen. But this is the reset. So this is an opportunity to rethink the business, which is another reason for contacting Brunel. Because I'm so used to doing it the old way, I may think the old way, but they stimulate me to think in new ways and things that I might not have realised. As I said, things might seem simple and easy, but they keep reminding me of basic marketing things. For example, the OTAs listed a lot of activities, like I said, and hiking was one. So I said, yeah, I could do hiking. There's lots of walks around other sites like Brunel Palace and what have you, promote that. And the first question they said to me was, who are you targeting? I said, well, what do you mean? I said, why are people going hiking? It could be single people or people who want to get away from their family because they've had enough of them and want to go on a long walk just to clear their mind after spending months locked up with a person. Or it might be families who have been for walks around their local area and want to explore new areas. So I'm either looking at individuals coming, single people who just want a bed and breakfast, or am I looking at families and I need to cater for the needs of families? And I'm going, yeah, okay, I've got to work that out now. But that was information, I hadn't seen it from that perspective. I hadn't thought about it, but they reminded me that that is what I need to think about. And I'm now looking at addressing how I can attract one or either of those groups of people.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say if you should present our perspective and then you come in at various steps, but go ahead.
Yeah, so like I said, Brunel have been very useful. They help me in many ways, and I'm seeing things and doing things that I wouldn't believe I would be doing 2 months ago. And they're also, because they are academics, they have access to research and information. And research is ongoing. In the Far East, where they're easing off the restrictions, there is papers coming out and other things. And they're telling me, have you seen what Hong Kong is doing? Okay, have you seen the hygiene standards that are being set up in the Far East? Because they're coming out of it first. And I'm going, oh, right, this is good because I'm getting nothing from the UK government apart from do social distancing. But hygiene, what is best practice? What is good practice? And I know that as a hospitality industry, that is being worked on, and some of the major chains are taking a lead in that. And I am using that information as well to help me. But what they also can do is tell me what is credible information. And again, I can illustrate this with an example. Hygiene. I'm thinking of supplying hygiene kits to all the guests. It will consist of masks, gloves and sanitizers, hand sanitizer. Now, they showed me the YouGov data on behaviour regarding face masks. And if you look at it, you will see that in Europe, Europeans, with the exception of France, sort of peaked at wearing face masks around the 20% mark. Okay, you look at face mask wearing in Southeast Asian countries, it doesn't fall below 90%. So looking ahead, if I have Asian guests or people with an Asian culture coming to my hotel, they will expect face masks as a standard thing that they will receive. Europeans, probably not. So I've got a conflict between two market segments and I have to deal with that. They remind me of that. But I've got credible information so I can make informed decisions about what to do. And then as we were discussing this and on the topic of face masks, it came up, well, look, can you get them branded? Because Harrods are selling designer face masks at £100 each. Now, I know how much face masks cost and I know they can be branded. I, as a small 11-room hotel, cannot afford to have face masks branded with a hotel logo on. But I have my network. So I went back to that and the good people at Experience Oxfordshire, I said to them, are you doing face masks to promote Oxford? Because if so, I would like a supply. Because if I can't promote myself, I'll promote the city I'm in. And we're working on that and that will be sorted out soon. So from that concrete information, we go down a path, or they send me down a path, and it's surprising what I find down there. And that's what I like about what they do. It's been very useful, very beneficial. I've had ideas that I wouldn't have thought of, and things like that. Sorry, Anna.
Thank you, Tim, for that. Thank you so much. Yes, Tim approached us. He approached me, and then I was working on something with Liyuan, and I invited her to join, and she said immediately yes. So we met Tim, and when we met, we kind of established some ground rules to start with. And we had two guiding principles. One was that we felt that just like no man is an island, no manager could solve this alone, right? And Tim completely said that himself. He keeps talking about his network, and it's something that we encouraged as well. So the first thing we did in line with this is to understand who are the key stakeholders for this hotel. And any company should do this. Who are the key groups beyond the owners? So usually people think about their shareholders. They might think about the customers, but we need to look beyond this because there are other groups that are essential for the survival of the company. They can block it, they can make things difficult, or they can help, as Tim was mentioning. So we looked at who are the key groups. We have the owners, shareholders, the lenders. We had customers, of course, and what type of customers we had. Employees are key. They are essential for survival of the company, and they have interest in survival of the company. There were suppliers like these tour groups, or could be partners of the Experience Oxfordshire and things like that. And then there were government too, not only the UK government, but local governments, foreign governments when they allow their citizens to travel, for instance, and local communities. Then for each of these groups, we tried to map what were their key interests, what was their main concern in this situation. For Tim, it's the survival of his business, but for customers, it's actually safety and health. They will stop traveling because they're worried about getting ill, or their employers who are worried about them getting ill. The employees was job security in addition to safety and health, and the government was concerned with public health and the safety of the country. So, and then when we understand this, then of course we need to start prioritizing who are the most important, most relevant, most impactful stakeholders. So we did this column here in the middle. With this in mind, we realized that we had to focus on understanding the immediate concerns and the immediate behaviors of these groups highlighted here. So this was our first guiding principle. We're not alone. Who are the key stakeholders that we need to focus on? And then the second one was yesterday's drunk. This is materializing this Egyptian proverb that essentially says what worked yesterday is not going to work today. As Tim mentioned, this is completely different. It's the cliff, right? So we can't use what happened yesterday, worked yesterday. We need to think new ways. We need to ditch all our dogmas. We need to challenge everything we know and move on. So you see that it's not only Tim that is suffering. We have this is impacting the whole industry. $447 billion lost this year alone, 2020, in the tourism industry. This includes airlines, of course, not just hotels. And immense job losses. And Europe is the region that is the most, that is likely to register the biggest loss. So this is a huge crisis for the whole sector. So because this is so different, we had to start by mapping where are we now, and what should we do? Because what we're going to do really depends on the type of situation we're facing now. So here we drew on the crisis management literature. The crisis management literature depicts a crisis life cycle across 6 stages. And for each of these stages, we'll do something different. So in the pre-event stage, we are trying to prevent. Then maybe when it seems that something might be happening, we'll start preparing. When emergency strikes, we are focusing on limiting damage and restoring. Then only then can we think about restoring services. Eventually, when we hit recovery stage, we can start repairing and reinvesting. And eventually, sometime down the line, we'll go back to normal, or possibly a new normal thing. Some things might have changed. So in the case of COVID, we mapped this against what we knew about the disease. We felt that we were here in the emergency stage, where pandemic has been declared. We'll need to focus on limiting damage. We didn't know exactly when we would move to the next stage. Okay, at this moment we just put some pegs on the ground about what might be happening, but we didn't know yet when this would happen. So for instance, in terms of the recovery stage, we felt that it wouldn't happen until a vaccine was available. Now some governments are talking about fall, beginning of new year, could be a year and a half or 2 years, we don't know. But we know that until that happens, we cannot move on to repairing and reinvestment. Okay, so we defined the criteria, the scenario planning that Tim was talking about, though we kept flexible in terms of timing. Okay, so now we realize we are in the emergency stage. We need to damage limitation. So what are we going to do? Well, last week, my colleague Ainurul ran a seminar about business planning, and she used this metaphor that I loved and that I'm stealing. So thank you, Ainurul, for presenting this idea. This idea that when you are in emergency, you are in a huge storm, okay? So what you need to do is to completely go back to basics. And she used this analogy of sailing under bare poles. So you need to reduce sail, just go to the minimum viable level of effort to make sure you don't crash. Because if you try to do too much, you'll crash and you'll lose your sails, you damage the boat. So this is what we try to do. It's emergency, let's go back to basics, let's go back to bare poles. We looked at the stakeholders that we mentioned before. So the owners, the customers, employees, what was happening here? So customers, everybody was canceling, as Tim showed you the data. Employees, some of them were ill or they were worried about being ill. They were and they were, of course, worried about their jobs. Governments, we knew that, for instance, the UK government introduced lockdown in late March, but they also introduced the furlough scheme. So putting all this together, in terms of reducing sale, we said, okay, we need to furlough some staff. Some hotels could furlough all staff. Team couldn't because of several reasons we may discuss later, and reduce to the minimum services possible. Not all, but as much as possible. Okay, we reduced sale, we are on bare balls. What now? We look around, what's the biggest danger is that we will run out of cash. So what is the biggest rock in front of you? We may run out of cash. So these helped us focus on the priority, which was to generate cash. Okay, and here we brought some kind of put our thinking. We were inspired in a tool called Ainsof Matrix that some of you may know. So, but essentially we looked at the current customer. What are the customers? What's happening? And we looked at what a team has in place. And this is where we started thinking, so what assets do you have? And the team said, oh, I have a hotel with 11 rooms. And I said, well, actually, yes, you have a hotel, but essentially you have a building with beds, which could be used for something other than hotel. And if you take the beds, you have a building. And if you take the building, have a particular location with some parking and some gardens. So we kind of going back to basics, always, always. So in these analysis, we had this meeting. We've been meeting weekly with team, and we had this meeting, and I have to say, I have to give kudos for team for keeping an open mind and not being offended by hurt by some of our suggestions. We so let's see, let me walk you through the process. We said, let's start with the existing customers and the existing offering. What's happening? Who are your customers and what's happening? And then team told us, he gave us an analysis of his breakdown, B2B versus B2C, nationalities, who repeat customers, and so on. What do they value? What do they need? And the existing offering, which is, of course, the hotel. So we started thinking, how can we generate cash from our existing customers and existing offering? Well, can we make some advanced bookings? Can we encourage our customers to book in advance? Now, what does this mean? If we were to go down this route, what we need to do? Well, customers, of course, they don't know what's happening with the disease. They don't know. They're worried about. They don't want to commit anything, money or things. So, if we're going to down this route to try and encourage advanced bookings, we must review the cancellation policy and make it as friendly as possible. For instance, you can give the bedrooms for nearly free. If people can't cancel, they will not book, right? So so this was our first step, and team look at the very generous, very flexible cancellation policy. Then the next step was to think, okay, we have existing customers. Is there something that we can give them with the assets we have, with the knowledge we have? Is there something that we can give to the existing customer that he will be prepared to pay for, that he'll be happy to give us cash? So we start thinking about, for instance, gift cards. It's a new product. Yes, it uses the existing assets. Maybe you can give a gift card to your parents to come and visit you for Christmas, for instance. In this case, as Tim mentioned, they have a lot of people that come because of the local boarding schools or the universities. Maybe you can offer some educational services. Other businesses, it's not team, but other business could look at start offering lessons, for instance, or they could sell merchandise. They could sell products. I know that my hairdresser, for instance, she started offering shampoos. We could order shampoos and some tutorials from her, things like that. So if we go down this route, then we need to start thinking about pricing of these products. We need to do some market research. We need to think about which kind of products we might offer, how to introduce them, things like that. So it's a different challenge. If it's not just about cancellation policies, you need to tap into other areas from marketing. Then we started thinking, okay, that's existing customers. We need to look at new customers, new possible sources of revenue. So as you move to new customers and new offerings, you start adding risk, right? So in terms of new customers, we started thinking, who else needs accommodation now? Our tourists are gone, our B2B bookings are gone, but who needs accommodation now? Well, the only people that are looking for accommodation now are essential workers, not just NHS, but we also have teachers. There were lots of schools near team that were still have some classes in place. You might have some, so distribution, post office, all these essential services that continued, these people might need a place to stay. So who are they? What would they need? And then if you're going down this route, you need to think about how can you start selling to them? How do you reach them? How do you make your product known to them? You might have to change the product too, right? Maybe it's a different type of bed. Maybe you need to offer food or stop offering food, whatever, these kind of things that you may need to offer. And then finally, the most risky one, which is new customers and new offerings. That's when we go back to the basics of what you have, right? So you have a place where people can sleep. Maybe you could look at long-term accommodation. So people may need, instead of a bed, one night or two, they might need a week. They might need a couple of weeks, right? You could have going down, maybe, we know that there are a few care homes around this hotel. and we know there were some people getting infected. There were huge rate of infections in care homes. Maybe they needed a spillover place. Maybe they needed a place to isolate their residents. Maybe the hotel could become provide this extra space for care homes. So it's a new customer and new offering, making use of your assets. Okay, forget the beds. You have a building. Maybe you could use the building for storage, because we know there's a lot of e-commerce going on, increase in e-commerce, or supermarkets are struggling to replenish their items. Maybe the hotel could be used as a storage space. Maybe you could use your you rent out the parking space. Maybe just a garden, maybe simply the address, right? For some businesses, the address is very valuable, and you could charge people to use your address if relevant. So I have to say, I have to give praise to Tim here. He took all of our suggestions on board. We brainstormed. He went to look for some others he wouldn't consider, others he did, but this was kind of the first exercise in terms of how to generate cash. Of course, if you can't generate cash from your customers, you need to think at things like more investment, getting new shareholders on board, or get new loans from banks. But even for that, you need to do this kind of exercise about understanding what's happening. Okay, so that was the first stage, the critical, the pandemic stage. Then we started looking at what are we going to do next, right? We need to prepare for the intermediate stage. We don't know when that will happen, when people can start moving, even if there are restrictions, but we need to start preparing for that. And here, continuing on the sailing analogy, for us, this is a bit like crossing the Good Hope, the Cape of Good Hope, right? So if you think about Magellan and the 16th century sailors, at that time, they too were facing something completely new, a big challenge. They had boats, they were on the sea, just like Tim has a hotel and is in the hospitality industry, but there is a corner that you're trying to cross, and you really don't know what's on the other side. You try to prepare as well as possible. So if you look at the reports from the 16th century, what were the challenges faced by the crews, the sailors and Magellan's team, they had large, sometimes freak waves, unpredictable things came out of, they were huge challenges, and they were unexpected challenges. There were wind speeds there, huge wind or varying wind speeds. There were rocks that they had to avoid, so challenges they had to avoid, and there were unpredictable cross currents. So this is the same with the hotel. There are things that interact, trends that interact with each other that completely changed the sailing, the business landscape for Tim. And there were also changes, going back to Magellan, there were also changes presented by the crew. They might get ill, they might mutiny. So we use this analogy to think about what would happen with the business. The key for Magellan's team, for the sailors team, it was to collect information, keep collecting information, not just information from the boat, but from allies. So for instance, in this case, history says that when Ferdinand Magellan arrived in some point, he received information from his father-in-law that the crew were preparing to revolt. So you need to use information that you collect and that others give you or allies give you. You need to understand the landscape as you start approaching it, and you need to be extremely flexible. So this is what we have been doing with Tim as well. In terms of information, Tim created a working group. We've been meeting, so there is Tim, who brings the perspective of, is a project leader, he knows the business, he communicates with everybody, and he needs to develop strategy and provide leadership to his team. Then he retained 2 members of staff. He retained the accountant because financial management was extremely important in this period, for instance, calculating new prices, and some human resources management issues. The manager itself lives on the premises and was in charge of operations and customer service and logistics. We interacted with some suppliers, and there was Liyuan and myself. Tim and I have been meeting weekly to debate these ideas. He's been meeting with his team separately, and we've been collecting lots and lots and lots of information. So which sources have we been using? One is internal. Tim's employees have been a major source of suggestions and information, really, really valuable. I keep telling Tim he has a really committed and engaged team that are valuable. So they came up with they share insights and they come up with suggestions. For instance, they told team that they had several queries from customers about extended stays. So they now can approach those customers and see if the appetite is still there and what they would need to make them stay. They also had some really good suggestions about keeping themselves safe and keeping staff safe. But that's not all. In addition to internal sources of information, we've been using external ones. We've been monitoring YouGov because they give information about evolving customer perceptions and attitudes. So one was the one about face masks that Tim mentioned, about perceptions of face masks and how they change. We read McKinsey reports because they have releasing some interesting customer information about, for instance, changing trends among travelers in China, they just released an interesting report recently. There are also some reports, for instance, from the online. So these are like Booking.com, TripAdvisor, Expedia, industry bodies as well, and papers. We are looking at academic papers, things emerging, working papers and journals, and sharing the insights with team. This is not enough, however. We also been collecting data. We are looking at collecting data. Team said we could do surveys of its consumers. We may team up with some of the partners if they want to do some consumer surveys, and we're going to do some research to understand changing consumer trends and consumer concerns. So collect information, high quality information, and digest this information. Based on these insights, what is the evolving landscape? What does it look like it's happening around the corner of the Cape of Good Hope? So according to the government, hotels will be able to open on July the 1st or maybe later, depending on how the index that Bori introduced is changing. So we know that we have until July the 1st to prepare for this intermediate stage, but that this may change. We know that there will be, even after this, there will be stringent social distancing requirements in place. We know that there are changes in travel, looking at what's happening in China, for instance. There is a shift towards domestic travel, and in Europe, we're monitoring Europe very closely, what's happening, because some of the countries are easing lockdown. But even within domestic, we know that, so even if team focuses on domestic, he will need to account for differences within the UK, because Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, they have their own plans for easing the lockdown. It seems that we're shifting the shift away from people who want to travel in families. They not necessarily, so when we talk about group travel, it's not group travel with a bunch of people you don't know. It will be group travel with your family, right? There is an emphasis on outdoor activities, as Tim mentioned. That's insight he got from his partners. And the risk factors, what people seem to be concerned with is ability to cancel bookings at short notice and get the refund, right? So we see from airlines that airlines are really delaying refund, and some, for instance, cruises, they don't want to refund, they just want to rebook. So the ability to get the money back or to change cancellation at short notice seems important. The other concerns could be about staff. Are staff ill? Are staff going to make me ill, or other guests? How do you keep everybody safe? What is the hotel layout? How is it keeping me safe? What sort of activities can I do if I go to this hotel and get good value for money? Another important issue we face, very big insight, is around this idea of cleanliness. Cleanliness is an extremely important concept for travelers. It already was, but seems that now it's even more important than safe location or friendly customer service. It's certainly more important than having a gym or having a spa at this moment. So not only is it important, but it is changing. What symbolizes cleanliness for our travelers is changing. So with this in mind, with this picture emerging, we are discussing how to adapt the business. So for instance, because of they cannot open before July the 1st, team had to extend furlough for his staff. Because of the social distancing requirements, team is looking at changing the layout of the hotel. The reception will have to change because where it is, it doesn't allow for 2 meters of staff, 2 meters distance between guests. So the reception of the hotel will have to change location. The breakfast will have to change. So we can't continue with buffet breakfasts, for instance, right? It's not hygienic. It doesn't help with social distancing. So maybe we're talking about breakfasts in bedroom, for instance. The issues of travel meant to a change in cancellation policy. We just looked at the wording again. The website is changing. There are a lot more pictures of outdoors, the outdoor spaces, for instance. You want to put an emphasis on the space in your website. You also change your what you advertise and what you focus on these online booking platforms. You have new offerings, so new partnerships, walking tours, for instance, instead of visiting a museum. New partnerships, the one that Tim mentioned with Experience Oxfordshire with the branded masks, and health checks for staff and for customers. And finally, in terms of cleanliness, team is looking at new cleaning products, new cleaning routines, and how to communicate this to customers, how to reassure customers that you are clean and you are a safe space. We're looking at things like visuals, keeping a very spaces, removing all clutter, because clutter usually triggers ideas of, it's the opposite of cleanliness in people's minds. So maybe even remove the coffee pots from the kettles from the bedroom to remove visual clutter. So, and these are things that we are experimenting with. We don't have the solution. We're trialing, we discuss every week. Team is happy to test things, and this is things that we're looking at. This is my final slide and my final sailing analogy, I promise. So this is, so as we continue our discussions, it's important to think about, we don't know yet. We don't have a clear picture of what's happening. We are in the middle of a very, very, very thick fog. Okay, we are in the middle of this thick fog, and as we approach July the 1st, this is becoming a little bit clear, but it's all uncertain. So we need to be careful, and we need to keep going through this cycle of recognizing so reading the signs, looking at information, looking what this tells us, rationalizing what does this mean for the business, and then refashioning, adapting what we do in order to deal with these changes. And this is my last slide, so I'm open for questions. And maybe, I don't know if Tim wants to say something, or maybe Ainurul wants to bring the questions in. Thank you for your attention. Tim, do you want to add something while Ainurul looks at the questions?
Yes, I mean, everything that Anna has said is what we went through. She just put in academic speak. But that's the beauty of it. It is founded on proper research, proper rigorous academic work, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, the breakfast, we discussed that. This is what they do. They push me down a path, and I'm surprised at what I find. I can't do buffet breakfast. It's not possible. So, can we serve it in the rooms? Well, if I get more than 5 people, it becomes a bit difficult. Okay. How about vouchers? Can, you know, vouchers for people who supply breakfast outside. Well, you take that to the next step. Well, instead of vouchers, why don't they give you the breakfast? Can you order it the night before? So back to my network, talking to local cafes and restaurants to see if that's a possibility. And talking about that, and then they said, well, what about lunch? I said, well, I don't do lunch. I said, yeah, but as we're doing vouchers and I'm talking to these people, we could do picnics. And all of a sudden, I've got a new revenue stream that I can offer people, which I hadn't thought about. And evening meal, I said, no, I can't do anything there because they can order it on any app on their phone and they can have it delivered if they so wish, and things like that. But that's the beauty of what they do. They know all that theory, but they're also practical. They use that theory to guide me, and I'm doing things that I wouldn't thought of doing. So thank you all.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim, for your kind words. So before I chip in the question here, but perhaps if you want to share with us your experience working with Anna and Tim on this, and what's your thoughts on this?
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the team. It's a pleasure to work with Tim because he's so open-minded. Whatever I tell him about Hong Kong and Taiwan, he's into it and he's never offended. And he actually appreciates my input. And for me, this is exhilarating experience. It's not completely, it's good for my mental health even to be able to help somebody. So I really like it. I hope I can continue to work with Tim and Anna and develop this not only to be helpful to Tim, but also develop them into some rigorous scientific research.
Thank you, Liyuan. So I think we have this one question here for Tim. So as Anna said, that we are focusing more on damage limitation at the moment. So how are you? And most of the conversation that we have now is preparing for the future, right? With the new norm. So how are you surviving now? So the assumption is that your cash flow is looking great.
Yes, I managed to secure sources of financing. The government has some excellent schemes. The furlough scheme has certainly helped. Working with the company accountant, doing possible scenarios, we worked out our needs and we were able to approach banks and use their funding they have available. So I have enough funding to see me through at the moment to the end of August. But hopefully by August I'm having people coming in and booking. If not, I've got a fallback after that, but it won't quite be the end. But yes, so the secured funding through the government schemes.
So Anna, do you want to say anything?
I think, yeah, well, I just saw a question here from Fintan about sometimes when you try to create a new product and coming up with a short-term solution, whether that impacts in the long term. And that's an extremely important question, Fintan. That's why we need to look at, we need to look beyond the immediate crisis and think about the next stages. And so, for instance, because we think we hope that we can reopen the hotel in July, we're not going to invest tremendous amounts of money and time and risk the brand into completely changing to, say, a nursing home or a storage solution. However, if it looked like that we couldn't reopen the hotel for the next year, then maybe it would pay for Tim. Then Tim would have to consider the warehousing option more seriously. So I think it's a very important question, Fintan. Thank you, because you need to look at these scenarios and then keep reevaluating them, so that if something happens, you're ready to move. So if the next scenario, the intermediate scenario, was delayed, we could move to the warehouse, new customers, new propositions more clearly. But if not, you need to keep the core of the business and the brand in the perspective. So that was my intervention.
Right, thank you so much for that. And I guess that the most important thing that we are doing now is, to prepare for businesses, to make sure that if something happens, we know we are ready to move, right? So I think this preparedness is what Tim and his team is actually currently doing, and perhaps this is something that we are advocating for other businesses, to start looking about making preparedness for themselves, not about preparing for a particular situation, but several scenarios that we have thought about, so that we can easily ease into it the moment we have more information on that. And we also have another question here. This is a very interesting and very in-depth support that we can get. Is there any other way that we can actually get similar support? I mean, before Anna can say something, maybe I could actually tell a little bit as well. Brunel and Brunel High for Brunel for the business school is actually organizing a business support program for adaptation. So we call it a Brunel Go for Growth program. We actually have 15 places available for businesses. Of course, it's not first come to first. It's actually, we have to evaluate the current situation of the business, but it is actually something that worth applying. And the first session will start on the 1st of June, and it will go through for 6 weeks. I have put the link on the chat session there, and we will actually replicate this further if we get more interest. So that's one thing. But in relation to this particular approach, Anna, Perhaps, would you be able to say anything if you are happy to share further in terms of the step that you suggested just now?
Absolutely, and this is why we did this webinar, because we outlined the tools that we used to provide advice to teams. So everyone, and this video will be publicly available, will be shared on YouTube. So by all means, go through this exercise about understanding who are your stakeholders, what are their priorities. Think about who are your existing customers, who could be potential customers. Go back to basics about the assets you have and how could you use them in a different place. So this will be made available, and I would encourage everybody to go through this exercise, apply these tools. I have to say, in terms, if you want to work with an academic, I don't know if that's the question, I think you need to understand it is mutual, right? So Tim reached out to me. He knew my work already. He knew I was interested in these topics about customer management, hotels. So you need to find the mutual interest, right? Of course, so there was things, and I was working on a project, hotels with Liyuan already, right? We need to think about what mutual benefits. So we're very keen to help with Tim, but Tim had to have an open mind, and he was also very keen to help us. So Tim is sharing data with us. We can use this case in teaching. Tim, you said that I'm not putting words in your mind, in your mouth, right?
No,
You said,
I agree.
exactly, said you can use, actually when he reached out to us, he said that I need your help. You can use my case for teaching in your materials. If there is a need to, you can write papers about this if you want. And if we do some data collection, he will help us. So we need to understand both interests. So if somebody wants to work with Brunel, reach out to Ainurul and the fantastic Brunel Hive team, find an expert with similar interests and think about mutual gains. How can you help each other? And keep an open mind on both sides.
This is sort of a question for the academics. There's obviously a lot of interest in what is being discussed. Is there a way of taking this forward? Could you create a forum or a group to share information so that we can, because the good thing about yourselves is it is good quality, credible information. So if we know what best practices are for hygiene control and things like that, if you made it available, if you had a group you can make it available to that other companies could join, then maybe that is another way of getting, I would say, the message out there, but of helping and supporting other companies.
Yeah, that's a fantastic suggestion, team. In fact, we are in the process of doing that. Today, we have our Brunel Hive website launch. So you could actually go to brunelhive.com, which actually hosted by the Brunel Business School. On LinkedIn, the university has started a Brunel for Business forum as well. And in the future, that we're going to start inviting more academics to be part of that forum. And hopefully we could actually use that channel to share this sort of information. So go ahead, for all businesses out there, I love what team is actually advocating here. We are preparing to provide all of this platform to make businesses easier to connect with us. We also at the university have a co-innovate program. So it is something that if you have any innovative project that you want support with, you could actually reach out to us, and we are more than happy to explore opportunities on how we could actually collaborate. In relation to collaboration, there are several ways on how we could actually do it. A very bespoke consultation project like what Ana and Liyuan is actually working with Team, for example. We also have students project, so if you want to get innovative insight, creative insight, and exploring new opportunities, sometimes working with younger generation is actually uplifting. We could actually get a lot of ideas and of course challenges, pushing our boundaries a bit in terms of doing something out of ordinary. So we also have that, and more importantly, if you look at our Brunel High website, we also have a research program that we could actually explore together, just like what Tim and Ana and Liyuan is currently doing. We also have a business support, a very bespoke business support opportunity for those who really need help and hand holding, but really don't know who specifically to approach in the university about a specific topic, take up this opportunity and, and then see, perhaps there might be another way that we could actually collaborate. We also have this executive learning program, very specific. If you think that you need some upskilling, a certain upskilling for your team members, reach out to us, and then we can then see how we could actually make it work. So I think I'm just summarizing what we could actually offer as a business school, as a university of Brunel University as well as a whole, because like what Ana said, for us from Brunel Business School, we don't actually work in isolation. So, we have access to data, we have access to resources, but more importantly, the network that we have. We were working with you, for example, businesses like Team. We are also working with our local community, and try to expand our network. And because I think one key message that we have here, like what Dabir, one of my colleagues, commented in the chat, is the knowing the environment, adaptability, and readiness to change. Right? And we as a businesses, university, we know that we also need to adapt, and we know that we need to work very closely with our with our clients like you, team, and others, to make sure that what we have is actually be able to share. So we are almost almost there in terms of the timing. Is there any other final words that each one of the panelists here want to share with everybody?
I would say to people, use your network, because you can't do it by yourself. Okay, I'm going to take this webinar and I'm going to disperse it through my network.
Oh, thank you.
I know not everyone can access, but it is it's a two-way relationship. Okay, they need data, they need information, they need to know how things are done. So if you do work, please share your information, because without it, we can't know what the landscape is and therefore know what decisions to make.
Before Anna starts and Liyuan start, I'm just letting you know that I'm actually putting a webinar feedback at the moment at the poll. So, while listening to the speakers saying their last word, I would appreciate if all the participants could support us by answering the question. This can help us to improve and also see whether you want more information with this regard to this type of webinars. So yes, please do the poll so that we could actually know how to do better. Anna, Liyuan?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Kim. This is a good opportunity, and these things that he very kindly thinks are valuable for academics like us are quite ordinary knowledge from teaching and doing research. This is what we do. So finally, there is this opportunity we can use it in real life and solve a really big business problem. I think this is fantastic.
Yes, I enjoy. I have to say, this is also this part of Brunel University's mission to work with the community and to interact with the community and help the community. So it's part of the ethos of their institution as well. But in terms of the specific experience, I think you need to approach it with a lot of humility from both sides, open mind. So team had an open mind, but we also had an open mind. At the end of the day, what at the end of the day, I can say whatever I want about the business, but team is the one facing his employees. He's the one who needs to write the checks. So you need to also, we didn't approach this from perspective of we know everything. We approached this with the perspective of asking questions. I think that's what every time team says we'll do this, and I say why are you doing this, why don't you do it some different ways? So it's asking questions and learning from the manager as well. It's not about pushing information, it's co-creating.
Yes. I think that's a very nice word to end, Anna. This co-creation process that what we are sharing. So I think what I got from this session is not only on the process of of reconfiguring, or try to adapt the business, particularly for those in the hospitality industry, but also the co-creation process, that it takes two to tango, and that is the most important thing. So apart from we have to, as a business, need to function at the bare minimum to survive, we also need to have this open mind and co-create with others, and expand our spheres of influence. Before when we look into this network that we have, we might actually think that it's only about suppliers or consumers and partners. But if we open up our minds, that there are so many other stakeholders out there that are willing to collaborate, that are willing to co-create together, somehow these our spheres of influence, I think now we are influencing team, and team also influencing us on how we work moving forward. So with that note, I would like to thank everybody for investing your time here with us today, and we hope to see you again next week on our next webinar, 26th of May, focusing on work isolation and compassionate leadership. So our colleagues will then share a little bit of their insight on how does compassionate leadership work, and how businesses can actually use this technique to help progress with the team and leadership within the organization. By that note, I would like to say thank you, and we will see you next week. Bye.